And what about over Iran? Because that was also something that was, telegraphed in the angry or madman manner.
Well, if you're talking about the Iranian response, I think the White House got it right when they said it was a theatrical response. Iran warned Qatar. Qatar actually closed their airspace in advance. We all had, obviously, all of the air and ballistic missile defenses and radars all pointing in the right direction. A symbolic number of missiles was launched, the same as the bombs that we dropped. And predictably, they were all knocked down and did cause no casualties to American forces. What Iran had to do is it had to do something to save face, but it didn't want to do so much that they lost their head, that we actually responded because of what they did. And that was tricky, but it seems to me that they threaded the needle. And that then gave the president the opportunity essentially to declare ceasefire. Prime Minister Netanyahu had to accept that. He had, in fact, to be fair, announced prior to that Israel was close to achieving its objectives, and subsequently that's what he said. And then Iran, in a way, probably taking a deep breath, probably relieved to have this, because Israel could have continued to pound them from the air, given that the Iranian air and ballistic missile defenses had been positively destroyed. They had air supremacy, not just air superiority.
I want to get to what happens, quote unquote, the day after. But first, I want to ask you, because you've obviously been, aware of this all day, this furious row over how well the strikes actually did. Trump has said it was, early and preliminary thing that was leaked from the Pentagon. Then there was that one that came from the Israeli Atomic Energy saying that they had, destroyed the site's critical infrastructure at Fordo. Trump basically still says it's obliterated. They can't use it. He thinks the hundreds of kilograms of enriched uranium is probably still down there and buried in cement. You are a former CIA and you're a former military commander. What do you think about this? In a minute, I'm going to play what Ehud Barak told me about the possibility of destroying all of this. But what do you make of this early arguments over how good or bad the strikes were?
Well, first and foremost, bomb damage assessment, the BDA process takes time, and you have to mine all possible sources of intelligence to shape a picture. And it's still early on, and I think President Trump acknowledged that. Some of his own officials have raised doubts about, was all the highly enriched uranium in the facilities we bombed? Were all the centrifuges there, or were some of them carted away? Is there a secret site? There's a lot of questions that linger after this, and it will take time to determine what the real answer is. What I would say is that the operations that Israel carried out were absolutely extraordinary. Incredible competence. The fact that they lost not a single plane or pilot or crew or whatever. They lost a couple of drones along the way, I think, but that was about it. And then the American operation was equally masterful. Again, I was the commander of Central Command when we developed the plan to destroy the entire nuclear component, all of the facilities of Iran. We actually rehearsed it one time in the United States. What was done here was very, very impressive. 125 aircraft of all different types to enable this, and it appears to be very, very impressive results. That said, no one knows, I don't think, really, what is inside Fordo at this point in time. You can speculate that dropping 12 massive ordnance penetrators, the vibration alone would heavily damage the centrifuges. We don't know if all of the highly enriched uranium has been destroyed or if it can be even got to, and so forth. I tend to think that this has set the program back massively. It's hard to measure whether that's many years or what have you, but this is an enormously successful operation.
Okay.
The question is there HEU that is out there somewhere else, only a turn of the enrichment process away from weapons grade? Are there centrifuges out there in a position that could do that? We will find out.
Okay, well, that's the important. I just want to stop you for a second, because that's the important question I want to ask you. HEU, highly enriched uranium. But here is another military commander and defense minister and prime minister, former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, who told me before the U.S. entered and while the Israelis were hitting, what he thought would be the optimum result out of this. Let me just play this.
it's not a secret that Israel alone cannot delay the nuclear program of Iran by a significant time period, probably several weeks, probably a month. But even the U.S. cannot delay them by more than a few months.
So I found that interesting. He said even the U.S. can't delay it by more than a few months. We've just discussed this. But what I want to know is it relevant? Now, I ask you this because Donald Trump was saying it doesn't matter. They have been destroyed. They know that, or whatever the word he used, they know that this war could start again. And furthermore, potentially they'll come to an agreement and say that they're not going to do this anymore. So what do you think is the optimum for the day after? What do you think should happen next?
Well, the optimum, and by the way, I know Ehud Barak well. I had great relations with him when he was the Minister of Defense, trying to get us to do this operation, I might add, all the way back at that time. And I'm not going to quibble whether it's a few months, a few years, whatever it may be. It depends. Again, is there any remaining HEU? Are there any remaining centrifuges? But what's really relevant here is I'm sure if they are identified and found, Israel will bomb them if that's necessary. This is not necessarily over. Israel has changed its strategic approach since 10/7 dramatically. They will never again allow a threat to be built up on their, not just on their borders, but all the way in the region, especially if it's a regime like this that constantly calls for death to Jews and death to Americans. What's the optimum? The optimum is that Iran recognizes what a position of weakness it is in. It recognizes the vulnerabilities it has right now. It has no air and ballistic missile defenses left. They're not going to be able to replace them anytime soon. Russia doesn't have any to spare. This was a Russian system destroyed. So Iran says, okay, we will give up our entire nuclear program and we will allow the International Atomic Energy Agency to come in and inspect, to oversee the process of dismantling, to validate and verify it, and to go anywhere at any time that they want to ensure that there's nothing being hidden somewhere. That's the optimum. Now, their history of negotiation, as you know well, Kристиан, is to obfuscate and delay and temporize and all the rest. So we'll see if they have the sense to do this. I suspect that may be difficult for them. They've spent billions and billions of dollars on this quixotic effort, which has now been set back very, very substantially, with all of the main facilities, at the very least, very heavily damaged, if not actually fully destroyed.
And do you think there could be the reverse, that they have saved some centrifuges, they have saved some of the enriched uranium, highly enriched uranium, and a program could continue underground? I mean, I know you've said if it happens, Israel could, see it and all the rest of it. But look, North Korea did it, and look where we are today.
I think we're much less sensitive to what North Korea was doing. It was a bit of a surprise. This would not be a surprise. I'm confident that Mossad, that Israeli intelligence, U.S. intelligence would identify if there are residual HEU stockpiles and centrifuges to enrich them to weapons grade and then try to craft a actual nuclear device, and they will destroy it. I think their strategic approach is dramatically different, and I'm not sure we all realize just how significant that is.